Good evening, friends. We start tonight with the immigration ban battle in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Office of the Attorney General has requested a stay on Judge James Robart's restraining order against the president's executive order on immigration. Both sides made the case in front of Judges Canby, Friedland, and Clifton in the Ninth Circuit. The government made the case the president should have the authority under the guise of national security to determine who enters the country. Tonight may not be the last chapter.
President, how far are you willing to take your travel ban fight?
Oh, we're going to take it through the system. It's very important. It's very important for the country, regardless of me or whoever succeeds at a later date. I mean, we have to have security in our country.
Is it going to go to the Supreme Court, you think?
Good, and we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't have to. It's common sense.
The appeals court has yet to render judgment, nor did they say when they would. For more on the ban and the fight in the courts, we're joined tonight by legal analyst Lionel of Lionel Media. Lionel, it doesn't take a media expert or legal expert or attorney to see that and to experience, so to speak, the aggressive nature of the judges on this panel tonight when the government was presenting its case. Your thoughts on what you saw?
Well, when you talk about the federal government versus the Washington state government, Ed, what was the most telling and what was the most interesting was normally the phrase is a court looks at the four corners of the document. In this particular case, the executive order. That's it. What does this executive order say about these countries, this situation now? They were talking about and referenced repeatedly statements made by candidate Trump, Rudy Giuliani, President Trump, extrajudicially, extra-legislatively, so to speak. And the issue that was astounding to me is, what does that have to do?
Yeah.
Now, the argument could be that that showed the intent of this. What's also interesting is, what is the irreparable harm? Because there are two conditions here. There must be irreparable harm and a likelihood of success later on. What is the irreparable harm? What they're alleging is that this harm is a violation of the Establishment Clause, namely that certain religions were being banned. And what I thought was, very frankly, a poor showing on the part of the Justice Department, because if you're a betting man, Ed, they're going to lift that ban. Guaranteed, and is going to go to the Supreme Court.
The Justice Department attorney said at least don't allow those who have not been in the United States to enter. I thought that was almost a statement of surrender.
Well, you can look at it that way. The argument started from, does the president have the right to do this? And the answer was yes, of course. But those judges looked, and I can't emphasize this enough, Ed, to look at statements made by Rudy Giuliani, candidate Donald Trump, instead of looking at this right now. What's happening was, this also goes to show you, remember, this president talked about a so-called judge.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that judges aren't supposed to take that into account, but there was a lot on the plate here. And also, this goes to show you, when you're running live nationwide, you don't think that affected those three judges? Live coverage? Nobody's heard the Ninth Circuit at prime time. So let me tell you something. Trump's Justice Department lost and is going to the Supreme Court.
Okay, Lionel, thanks for the analysis tonight. And as I said, the appeals court has yet to render judgment. Turning to nominations, at a historic move, Vice President Mike Pence cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate to confirm Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education. The tie-breaking vote came as Republican Senators Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska opposed President Trump's nominee to head the U.S. Department of Education. Senate Democrats have opposed many of the president's cabinet appointees. In nominations, the vote to confirm Jeff Sessions for Attorney General now moves to the Senate floor following the confirmation of DeVos. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer directly criticized the Democrats for historic obstructionism.
The Vice President had a big day on Capitol Hill where he cast a historic deciding vote for Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. The fact that we had to get to the point where the Vice President had to be pulled in to overcome the Democrats' historic and partisan logjam of the president's qualified nominee is another glaring reminder of the unprecedented obstruction that Senate Democrats have engaged in throughout this process.
Thus far, the Democrats have been unable to block a single nominee by the president. Manila Chan has more on the Education Secretary appointment. Manila?
Yeah, another unprecedented action from the Trump administration as Mike Pence cast his vote in favor of confirming Betsy DeVos as Education Secretary, just as you said.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative and the nomination is confirmed.
There you go. The Senate was split right down the middle, 50-50, due to 2 Republican senators defecting from the party line vote. Now, every single Democratic senator was unified in a nay vote against DeVos. No surprise there, following their 24-hour talkathon listing all the reasons that she shouldn't be confirmed. The Democrats cited things such as DeVos's family wealth. Her family has donated tens of millions of dollars to the Republican Party and Republican super PACs during the last few election cycles. Further back, her family had donations that have mounted to over $200 million, as cited by Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, Dems think this is a case of pay to play. Further to that, DeVos herself is a product of private school education. Her entire life has never held a job in the education field either. Now, those in favor of her say that this really isn't necessary for the job because this position is to deal with politics and policy of education, not to teach kids. So she has, however, spent the bulk of her adult life being very politically active in her home state of Michigan, where she has served as the chairperson for the Republican Party there and spent a lot of time as an education activist. Now, although her experience in this arena is on a state level in Michigan, Dems are worried because 80% of the charter schools in Michigan are underperforming the state minimums, and it's nearly impossible to follow the money trail of where federal funds are being spent at these schools. So there are tons and tons of teachers and tons of parents and education advocates out there tonight, right along the Beltway, who are really upset by her confirmation tonight.
So the bottom line here, Manila, is that the unions really are somewhat nervous about this appointment, are they not?
Oh, absolutely. They're afraid that she has very limited experience, not only in policy, but in how things are actually executed on the ground level at the schools with the students. So they believe it's from the ground up. And this is a case that, it's a woman that's like the Democrat said, has paid to play for multiple generations in her family.
Okay, thanks, Manila, reporting tonight on that. Leading U.S. businessmen are urging the Senate to confirm President Trump's nominee for Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Jay Timmons, CEO of the National Association of Manufacturers, called Mnuchin an ideal candidate and praised his leadership skills and background in business. Although the patriotic millionaires penned a letter arguing that Mnuchin was unfit for the position. Morris Pearl is the chair of the Patriotic Millionaires, and he joins us tonight. Morris, nice to have you with us this evening. I appreciate your time. Is this man unqualified, or is he not a good fit, or is he compromised in some way? Your thoughts?
Well, thank you for having me on, Ed. I think all of the above. He both is advocating policies which are not going to work for most Americans, and he's had poor moral character in that he lied to the senators about things that are clearly on the record, and he's not a good person to be overseeing what has to be a position of high integrity.
What did he lie about? Where was the problem in his testimony? And I know the Democrats wanted another hearing and they did not get it.
Well, specifically, for instance, about all the robo-signing at One West. Judges have ruled against them. His own employees have admitted doing robo-signing, but he just sat there in front of the senators and denied it.
What is
Senator McCaskill and Brown asked him about those things, and he flat out lied.
What does this mean for Wall Street? I mean, Glass-Steagall not going to take place. Goodbye to regulations. This guy was around during the mortgage meltdown. What does that say?
Well, it says that he was involved in massive amounts of foreclosures and didn't even think it was necessary to do the paperwork properly, and then later lied about it. Yes, he's a massive donor to the Trump campaign, just as you were discussing Ms. DeVos, but that doesn't make him qualified to be the Treasury Secretary, one of the most important positions in America.
So this flies in the face. This really flies in the face of what now President Trump said on the campaign trail about what he was going to do to Wall Street.
Well, yeah, this is somebody who is a leading banker and who used the power of big banks and who wants less bank regulation so there can be more easy to do foreclosures against homeowners. I mean, that's the exact opposite of what I think Trump was trying to tell the people of America he wanted to do.
How long did it take to the patriotic millionaires to come to this conclusion?
Well, I mean, we actually thought about it for a while and was reading and listening to what the gentleman was saying. So it's not something that just flew off the handle, oh, Trump nominated, we're against. But no, we were reading what he did and what he said and how he responded to the senators and how he just seems to lack even the necessity of telling the truth about things.
Okay, Morris Pearl, nice to have you with us tonight. Appreciate your time. We'll follow the story for sure. Democratic lawmakers, as of yet, have come up with an effective response to the president's agenda. He seems to be getting everything he wants. For more on the Democrats' plan and how they plan to stop the president, we're joined tonight by Tim Canova, chair of the Progressive for All, and also Ryan Sorba, who's the chairman of the Young Conservatives of America. Gentlemen, nice to have you with us tonight. Tim, I'll start with you. Thank you, Ed. Democrats are talking about impeachment. They're talking about the FBI getting involved in an investigation of the president. Is this where the American people are right now? It seems like the Democrats are somewhat issueless or rudderless. And what is their game plan?
Well, I think part of the problem for the Democrats right now is that the Republicans actually have the votes to get an awful lot of things through both houses of Congress. And you see this at the state level, too. Down here in Florida, Tallahassee is a Republican-dominated state legislature. So we can fight the good fight and try to slow down or stop the Republican agenda, but the question is, where do we go from there? I'll tell you, here in Florida, some of the big issues that are looming are environmental issues, fracking and pipelines, and we see this all over the country. You know, it's been said that Standing Rock is everywhere. Here in Florida, we have the Sable Trail Pipeline, a 515-mile pipeline, a $3 billion project that goes right through sinkhole country. So the question is, how do you stop something like this? This is part of their agenda, the Republican agenda. And when you don't have votes to stop it, you have to come out with a movement, such as the divestment movement, to start pressuring folks to start changing their bank accounts, to start divesting university endowments, and start shifting how the game is played when you don't have the votes in Congress.
Ryan, this is a rare time in history that so much power is with one party. We hear so much about the president and his negotiating skills. Wouldn't this be the best time for the legislators to figure out how to negotiate and get exactly what they want?
Absolutely. I mean, Donald Trump is the author of The Art of the Deal, and that's exactly what he's going to, the art that he's going to use to get his agenda through. He's got an unprecedented amount of support in Congress and among the American people, despite what the left-wing media has to say, and he's going to be successful, and it's going to be good for America. He's going to be obviously putting America first and America's best interest first and the American people's interest first.
Well, they put health care first, no question about it. A lot of conversation about that. But, Ryan, the Democrats are sitting and watching the Republicans fight behind closed doors about what to do with repeal and replace. Does anybody on the Republican side know what's going to happen there?
Absolutely. You know, I think that Donald Trump and the Republicans are currently working out the details behind closed doors, and they're going to come out with a healthcare system that actually works from an economic point of view, from an insurance point of view. And I think they're going to simplify the system. They're going to make it better, cheaper, more accessible. So I think that whatever happens, it's going to be better for the American people. I think the Democratic Party is going to say anything and everything that they can to attempt to fight it. But I don't think they're going to be able to win.
Tim, is this an opportunity for the Democrats? I mean, we've got no less than a dozen different answers from Republicans on what they're going to do on health care.
It absolutely shows the difficulty now for the Republicans. You know, they've spent years now attacking Obamacare, which was initially really a Republican blueprint for health care reform, and they attacked it mercilessly for years. They don't have a real plan on how to change the system, and the problem is they're now going to own health care. Whatever system they put in place to replace Obamacare, it's going to result in a lot of hardship for folks. And now the Republicans are going to have to answer to a lot of people who might be losing their insurance or being hit on the chin otherwise by changes in the health care law.
Tim Canova, Ryan Sorba. Gentlemen, thanks so much. We'll do it again. In other news tonight, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov are set to meet in the coming days. And ahead of meeting Russia's ambassador to the UN, Vitaly Churkin gave an exclusive interview to RT America's Alexei Yaroslavsky. The ambassador addressed U.S.-Russia relations and explained why the two countries should work together in Ukraine and elsewhere around the world.
We covered a lot of ground in our exclusive conversation with Russia's ambassador to the UN, Vitaly Churkin, from Ukraine to Syria, Yemen, his potential relations with the new ambassador to the UN from the United States, Nikki Haley, Rex Tillerson, and the Trump administration in general. First and foremost, we spoke about Ukraine and the escalation of violence there. Vitaly Churkin again insisted that this violence could be provoked by Kiev as one of the measures to undermine the potential reset of ties between the United States and Russia.
I think that those who are provoking those manifestations of violence in eastern Ukraine, this may be one of their goals, to make sure, because they don't want the relations between Russia and the United States to improve, to make sure that there are additional obstacles for that improvement to happen. And of course, the crisis in Ukraine is one of the things which need to be overcome for the potential of Russia-US cooperation really to be fully utilized. And also, I mean, recently we had this Ukrainian resolution in the General Assembly, human rights in Crimea. But that was on, people were not voting about human rights in Crimea. I mean, many of those who voted did not even read this resolution. It was another test of are you sympathizing with Ukraine or are you sympathizing with Russia under the current circumstances?
Churkin also mentioned specifically that the reporting coming from Ukraine these days is very one-sided. They're reporting about the deaths on the Ukrainian-held side, while there's basically no mention of casualties and destruction on the side of the anti-government forces in Donetsk and other parts. And that may be one of the reasons why even the Trump administration believes it has no adequate information about what's actually going on in Ukraine. We also covered the potential relations of the Russian foreign policy establishment with the new U.S. administration, despite somewhat harsh words about Russia that Nikki Haley said in her first address to the UN Security Council. Vitaly Churkin was very cautiously positive about his cooperation with his new UN counterpart from the U.S.
She started out by saying that she didn't want, it's not a direct quote, she didn't want sort of to spoil her relations with Russia, which I thought was a very good signal. But of course, I did not expect her in her first speech in a Security Council meeting presided over by Ukraine to depart from the sort of the standard American position. She said, we'll continue to do so and so. But you know, you and I, we know Anglo-Saxon sort of culture and history and psychology and psyche. Remember, never say never. This is one of the things which we sort of need to keep in mind. Things are evolving, so I would not be too concerned over a reiteration of the previous position.
So all in all, the impression I've got from the interview with Churkin is that it's really a cautious optimism now. But Vitaly Churkin insisted at the end of our interview that he expects a very busy and rough year in the foreign relations, but is still optimistic that things may actually get better. Alexei Yaroslavsky, RT, reporting from New York City.
Some Democrats are floating the idea of impeachment. They are concerned about the president's association with Russia. Democratic Congresswoman from California, Maxine Waters, accused the Russian military of making great gains recently, but seemed a little confused or unsure about exactly where those gains are coming from.
Knowing that he is responsible for supplying the bombs that killed innocent children and families in Aleppo. And the fact that he is wrapping his arms around Putin while Putin is continuing to advance into Korea, I think that he is leading himself into that kind of position where folks will begin to ask, what are we going to do? And the answer is going to be, eventually, we've got to do something about him.
Korea? I think she meant Ukraine. Earlier today, Daniel McAdams, executive director of the Ron Paul Institute, was critical of the warmongering rhetoric coming out of the Democratic Party.
I think it's more than a gaffe. It shows that this particular congresswoman, and unfortunately many like her, simply don't have a grasp of these issues. They live in a bubble. They live in an echo chamber. Their information comes from places like the Washington Post, the mainstream media, which pushes the line that Putin and Trump are together and Putin interfered with the elections, something for which there has been no evidence provided whatsoever. What's very sad is the Democratic Party, stung by their terrible loss in the elections, have now made common cause with the neocons of all people, invading Russia and pushing the U.S. toward conflict with Russia. It really is a kind of a pathetic and unholy alliance.
The UK's Sunday Times says top British companies are pulling their advertisements from RT UK over accusations that the channel airs fake news and propaganda. Laura Smith has the details tonight.
The Sunday Times initiated all this, in fact. They called the ad agencies directly and they asked them whether they knew that their adverts were being played on the so-called propaganda channel. The companies then panicked because they were worried about the content of the article, and they then called up and pulled their advertising. And we spoke to one of those advertising sales houses, and here's what they told us happened next.
The agencies, on behalf of their clients, pulled their airtime for the reason that they had been contacted by the Sunday Times. The Sunday Times asked them to make comment on their advertising on RT for the Sunday, 5th of February edition. These advertisers have panicked about the content of the article and pulled their airtime.
So the ad agencies panicked, they pulled their advertising, and that's when the Sunday Times published its article under the headline, UK Advertisers Shun Putin TV Channel. We asked the Sunday Times for comment, and they assured us that they didn't mention RT UK by name. But in the article, they say that they are basing it on a statement from an MP called Damian Collins. He's the chairman of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee. They quote him as calling on people to boycott the disinformation and propaganda channel. But the actual quote says channels, plural. We asked him for comment and he clarified for us. Here it is.
My comments were aimed broadly at any channel or website which produces and broadcasts fake news. I did not name any individual organisation in my remarks.
So he says he didn't name any individual organisation in the remarks. We've also spoken to RT's editor-in-chief, and here's her reaction to what's been going on.
The sales house, which advertisers use to place their content on RT UK, told us that several companies have decided to stop using RT after the Sunday Times newspaper made phone calls to them. A Sunday Times article says that the advertisers refused to work with us because of Kremlin propaganda, citing a British MP's calls to boycott RT. But he didn't actually say that.
So we're getting to the bottom of this story now. We also called the Times newspaper, but they said that due to a high volume of requests, they could only reply when they had something specific to say.
An explosive decision by the Israeli parliament on Monday to legalize thousands of Jewish settlements in the West Bank. Legal challenges in Israel's Supreme Court could complicate the warming relationship with the United States. RT's Simone Del Rosario brings us reaction to the decision.
Just days after demolition started in the West Bank to destroy illegal Jewish settlements on private Palestinian land, Israeli parliament moved to retroactively legalize the homes here in Amona and thousands elsewhere. The vote passed 60 to 52, with opposition lawmakers shouting from their seats.
We are voting tonight for the connection between the Jewish people and its land. The whole land is ours, all of it.
The land captured by Israel in the Six-Day War of 1967 has been a point of contention for international politics ever since. Israel's own high court ruled the Jewish settlements illegal and ordered security forces to evacuate the settlers, forced removal that started this month. That effort lasted less than a week before Parliament stepped in.
This bill is outrageous. It gives green light for the settlers to steal private Palestinian lands, and we will, Peace Now, alongside other human rights NGOs, petition to the Supreme Court in order to cancel this ridiculous bill.
Along with petitioning the Supreme Court, anti-settlers are calling on the international community to act. The United Nations has already condemned the settlements, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to build even more. Even President Donald Trump, who has not taken an official stance on the settlements, released a statement through the White House saying the construction of new settlements may not be helpful in achieving peace. Netanyahu and Trump are expected to discuss the issue when they meet at the White House on February 15th. In Washington, Simone Del Rosario, RT.
Iran has said recent missile tests are not a statement to the new U.S. administration. The foreign ministry stated that the country knows President Trump, quote, quite well. On Saturday, Iran's Revolutionary Guards conducted further missile and radar tests to the east of the capital of Tehran. The Trump administration, however, is not backing down from the claim that Iran is now on notice.
I think the president or the Ayatollah is going to realize that there is a new president in office. This president's not going to sit by and let Iran flout its violations or its apparent violations to the joint agreement. But he will continue to take action as he sees fit. But I think Iran is kidding itself if they don't realize that there is a new president in town.
For more on Iran, Trump administration's approach to the country and foreign policy, we're joined tonight by J.D. Gordon, former Pentagon spokesman. Good to have you with us, J.D.
Thanks, Ed.
Right now, on notice, what does it mean?
Well, it means that the United States is going to pay a lot more attention to what Iran's doing. I think President Obama was too weak towards Iran, and they took advantage of it. I think Western leaders were too weak towards Iran. They should have never been allowed to continue enriching uranium, because any country that can enrich uranium can make a nuclear weapon. So, yeah, they're on notice now.
Now, there's a number of countries that are saying that they can't blow up this and destroy this Iranian nuclear deal. Your thoughts on that? I mean, is this the beginning of that with the Trump administration?
Well, yeah, President Trump said during the campaign that he would want to renegotiate that deal. It's an awful deal, one of the worst ever. So it just allows Iran to get a nuclear weapon, but not right away. It takes more time now, because since they can still enrich uranium, they can cheat. And also, this accord expires over time, so they will get it if this accord continues as it is.
But the missile tests are continuing, and one would believe that there will be more tests in the near future. So what are the options of the Trump administration? More sanctions?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to continue sanctions on Iran. We have to make them a lot tougher. We have to really squeeze the leadership in Tehran, because otherwise they don't budge. Iran has to remember that the U.S. spends about 40 times what they do on defense. Our U.S. economy is over 40 times the Iranian economy. So if we really wanted to be tough with Iran, we could.
Missile strikes on some of their sites? I mean, that would be obviously an act of war. The Congress would have to get involved in a decision like that. And isn't it somewhat flamboyant to come out and say this country is on notice with no teeth behind it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Iran has to wake up to the reality that America is a much more powerful country. They need to remember that in 1988, during the Iran-Iraq War, in one day, our Navy destroyed about half of their Navy in one day. So Iran needs to be put on notice.
Is McCain and Graham going to come along with the president? I mean, I remember the campaign trail, bomb, 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 bomb Iran. I mean, we know where McCain is on this.
Yeah, Senator McCain has been very tough on Iran. So I think that we're going to have some unity in the United States. People realize that President Obama tried to have a world tour where he was nice to everybody. Well, guess what? It didn't work out with dictators like in Iran and Cuba.
But there were a lot of countries that signed on to this Iranian nuclear deal, not just the United States. I mean, the world community was on this. Isn't this bucking the world community on what they want?
Well, we need to have a change in attitude, because a nuclear-armed Iran is horrible for the world, because then the Saudis will get one, the Turks will get one, and the Egyptians will get one. And look, Ed, you know, they've been fighting for thousands of years in the Middle East. Do we really want a nuclear-armed Iran? That's insanity. Okay. So we have to toughen up.
J.D. Gordon, good to have you with us. Thanks so much. The Trump administration has given the final go ahead and build the Dakota Access Pipeline. The Army Corps of Engineers granted an easement allowing the project to cross the Missouri River north of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. The president signed a memorandum on January 24th urging the Army Corps to expedite the process. The easement comes 2 weeks earlier than expected. The Army had earlier agreed to hear public statements on the project until February 20th. Now it's been given the green light by the Trump administration. And that is our news tonight. Follow me on Twitter at News with Ed, and like me on the Facebook page, WeGotEd.com. I'm Ed Schultz reporting tonight from Washington. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.